An arrogant ex-con challenges a tomb guard, but he has no idea who he's messing with. At Arlington National Cemetery, where silence means respect and every step is sacred, this man dares to break the rules. He laughs at the uniform, crosses the line, and dares the guard to flinch. But what starts as a petty stunt spirals into something darker, more dangerous. Why does this ex-con keep coming back? What secret is he hiding behind the rage? And when the final line is crossed, what forces him back to prison in minutes? What does it take to break a soldier trained never to move? Every time I see your comments, I'm reminded how stories connect us across distances, backgrounds, and hearts. If values like respect, courage, and compassion still guide you, then you're part of this story too. The early morning mist clung to the pristine grounds of Arlington National Cemetery, where row upon row of white headstones stretched into the distance like silent sentinels. Sergeant Marcus Delacroix stood at attention before the tomb of the unknown soldier, his polished shoes and crisp uniform reflecting his unwavering dedication to duty. 21 steps. Turn. 21 seconds of silence. Turn. 21 steps back. The sacred ritual that Marcus had performed thousands of times over the past 3 years never lost its meaning. Each step was a tribute, each moment of stillness a prayer for those who had given everything for their country. His movements were precise, mechanical, the result of countless hours of training and discipline. The M14 rifle rested perfectly against his shoulder, its weight familiar and comforting. As he marched, his mind drifted to the reason he had chosen this path. "You'd be proud of me now, Tommy," he thought, his heart aching with the memory of his younger brother. 3 years had passed since that devastating day, when 2 solemn officers had appeared at their family's doorstep with news that would shatter their world. Tommy, just 22 years old, had been killed in action in Afghanistan. The morning sun began to break through the clouds, casting long shadows across the marble steps. Marcus felt the warmth on his face but maintained his stoic expression. In 3 years of service as a tomb guard, he had never broken protocol, never missed a step, never dishonored the sacred duty he had sworn to uphold. A small group of visitors gathered to watch the changing of the guard. Marcus could hear their hushed whispers, see their hands pressed to their hearts out of the corner of his eye. He remembered being one of them once, standing with Tommy beside him, both of them awestruck by the precision and dignity of the guards. "One day," Tommy had said, "I'm going to do something just as important." The memory brought a fresh wave of grief, but Marcus channeled it into his purpose, just as he had learned to do. Between his carefully measured steps, Marcus observed the inscription on the tomb. "Here rests in honored glory an American soldier known but to God." These words had become more than just a memorial inscription to him. They were a daily reminder of why he served. In his mind, every unknown soldier carried his brother's face. The morning routine continued with clockwork precision. Marcus inspected his uniform one final time before his shift, ensuring every medal was perfectly aligned, every crease razor sharp. His fellow guards often joked that he could spot a speck of dust from 20 paces, but they understood. They all did. This wasn't just a job, it was a calling. In the guard quarters, before his shift, Marcus had paused at his locker where he kept a worn photograph of Tommy. His brother's bright smile and confident pose in his combat fatigues served as a daily inspiration. "Watch over me today, little brother," he whispered, a private ritual he performed each morning. As he continued his patrol, Marcus reflected on the path that had led him here. After Tommy's death, he had struggled to find purpose in his military service. The survivor's guilt had nearly overwhelmed him until he discovered the tomb guard position. Here he found a way to channel his grief into something meaningful, something larger than himself. The requirements had been demanding, learning the history of every grave marker within the immediate vicinity, memorizing pages of Arlington National Cemetery history, maintaining perfect uniform standards, and mastering the precise movements required for guard duty. But Marcus had excelled, driven by an inner fire that his commanding officers quickly recognized. A cool breeze rustled through the trees, carrying with it the sound of distant taps being played at another funeral service. Marcus's jaw tightened imperceptibly. Each new burial was a reminder of the continuous sacrifice of American service members, a reminder of why his duty mattered so much. His fellow guards had noticed how he would often stay after his shift, standing in quiet contemplation before the tomb. Some had even seen him on his days off, visiting Tommy's grave in Section 60, several rows down from where they laid the most recent casualties of ongoing conflicts. The sun climbed higher in the sky as Marcus continued his watch. Each step was measured, each movement deliberate. He had learned that true honor wasn't found in grand gestures, but in the quiet persistence of duty faithfully performed. Every day he strove to live up to the sacred trust placed in him as a guardian of the unknown soldiers. In the distance, a young family approached the tomb. A small boy, no more than 7, watched with wide-eyed wonder as Marcus executed his precise movements. For a moment, he saw himself and Tommy in that child's expression, and his resolve strengthened even further. This was why he served, not just to honor the fallen, but to inspire the living with the values of duty, respect, and unwavering dedication. The morning wore on, but Marcus's vigilance never wavered. 3 years of perfect service, and each day mattered as much as the first. He was more than just a guard. He was a keeper of memory, a guardian of honor, and a brother still serving alongside the spirit of the sibling he had lost. The late morning sun beat down on the parking lot at Arlington National Cemetery as a midnight black Dodge Charger pulled into a space, its engine rumbling aggressively before falling silent. The driver's door swung open, and Brock Tank Kowalski unfolded his massive 6'3" frame from behind the wheel. His shaved head gleamed in the sunlight, and prison tattoos snaked up his thick neck and onto his muscled forearms. "This is stupid," Tank growled, adjusting his tight black t-shirt over his 280-pound frame. "Could be at the beach instead of some boring cemetery." His girlfriend Lisa stepped out of the passenger side, her face tight with disappointment. "It's important to show respect, Brock. Jake's doing a report on military traditions for school." Her 14-year-old son Jake climbed out of the back seat, keeping his distance from Tank. The boy's eyes darted nervously between his mother and her boyfriend of 3 months, the same boyfriend who had just finished serving 5 years for putting 2 men in the hospital during a bar fight. "Respect?" Tank spat the word like it tasted bad. "These toy soldiers playing dress-up don't deserve respect. Real tough guys don't waste time marching around like robots." A family walking nearby heard his words and quickly hustled their children in the opposite direction. Tank's lips curved into a satisfied smirk. He liked when people feared him. Fear meant power, and power meant respect. That's what prison had taught him. "The changing of the guard ceremony is starting in 15 minutes, Lisa said, consulting a brochure. "It's supposed to be really moving." Tank rolled his shoulders, making his massive frame look even more intimidating. "Moving? Give me a break. Bunch of pretty boys in fancy uniforms practicing their dance steps. That ain't real military." Jake flinched at Tank's harsh words but said nothing. He'd learned in the past 3 months that disagreeing with Tank usually led to shouting, and shouting made his mom cry. They walked toward the tomb of the unknown soldier, Tank's heavy boots thudding against the pavement. Other visitors instinctively moved aside, creating a bubble of space around his intimidating presence. The prison tattoos covering his arms told stories of violence. A skull wrapped in barbed wire, a dagger dripping blood, brass knuckles surrounded by flames. "Look at all these sheep," Tank muttered, gesturing at the respectful crowd gathering to watch the ceremony. "Standing around like they're at church or something." Lisa touched his arm gently. "Please try to be respectful, Brock. This means a lot to Jake." Tank shrugged off her touch. "Kid needs to learn what real respect is. You don't get it by playing soldier and marching around. You get it by being the biggest, baddest guy in the room, by making sure everyone knows you're not to be messed with." A guard approached their group, his face professionally neutral. "Sir, we ask that visitors maintain a quiet, respectful atmosphere near the tomb." Tank drew himself up to his full height, towering over the guard. "You asking me to shut up, rent-a-cop?" "Brock, please," Lisa whispered, her face flushing with embarrassment. The guard remained calm. Sir, this is a sacred place of honor. We simply ask that all visitors show appropriate respect for our fallen soldiers. Honor? Tank laughed loudly, causing several nearby visitors to turn and stare. You want to talk about honor? I spent 5 years in Leavenworth showing people what real honor looks like. You mess with me, you pay the price. That's honor. The guard's expression didn't change, but his hand drifted toward his radio. Sir, if you cannot maintain appropriate behavior, I'll have to ask you to leave. Tank took a threatening step forward, his massive chest nearly touching the guard's uniform. You trying to throw me out, tough guy? Maybe we should step around back and discuss what real toughness looks like. Mom, Jake whispered, tugging at Lisa's sleeve. Can we go? Lisa nodded quickly, her face pale. Brock, let's just leave. This was a bad idea. Tank held the guard's gaze for another long moment, his jaw clenched and fists balled at his sides. Finally, he stepped back with a dismissive sneer. Place is a joke anyway. Bunch of wimps playing pretend soldier. As they walked back toward the parking lot, Tank's heavy footsteps echoed off the stone pathways. Visitors scrambled to get out of his way, mothers pulling their children close as he passed. The fear in their eyes made him stand taller, walk with more swagger. Real soldiers don't waste time with ceremonies, he declared loudly enough for everyone to hear. Real tough guys prove themselves with their fists, not fancy uniforms and rifle tricks. Lisa and Jake trailed behind him, their faces burning with shame. The boy clutched his notebook to his chest, the pages still blank where his report on military traditions was supposed to be. Tank's display of disrespect had ruined any chance of completing the assignment. Back at the car, Tank slammed his door hard enough to make the whole vehicle shake. Waste of a perfectly good morning, he growled, turning the key and making the engine roar. Next time I'd pick where we go. Somewhere that appreciates real men, not this military pageant garbage. The warm afternoon sun cast long shadows across Arlington National Cemetery as Marcus Delacroix executed his precise 21 steps along the black mat before the tomb of the unknown soldier. His movements were crisp, deliberate, and perfect, just as they had been for the past 3 years. The M14 rifle rested expertly against his shoulder, its polished surface gleaming. A respectful crowd of about 50 visitors watched in hushed silence from behind the chain barrier, all except one. Tank's loud voice cut through the sacred quiet like a thunderclap. Check out G.I. Joe over here, Tank bellowed, earning horrified looks from nearby tourists. Bet he practiced those fancy steps in his mama's basement. Marcus maintained his focus, completing his turn with razor-sharp precision. Inside, his heart pounded with controlled fury, but his face remained a mask of dignified calm. 3 more steps. Turn. Face east for 21 seconds. What's wrong, soldier boy? Tank's voice grew louder, more challenging. Too busy playing pretend to answer me? Lisa tugged desperately at Tank's arm. Brock, please stop, you're embarrassing us. Tank yanked his arm free and took a deliberate step forward. His heavy boot crossed over the chain barrier, landing with a thud on the other side. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Several people pulled out their phones, recording the unfolding scene. I'm talking to you, weekend warrior. Tank took another step forward, now fully beyond the barrier. His massive frame cast a shadow across Marcus's path. All dressed up in your pretty uniform. Bet you've never seen real action. Marcus completed his turn at the end of the mat, facing Tank directly. His voice rang out clear and authoritative, exactly as protocol demanded. Sir, it is requested that all visitors maintain a quiet and respectful distance behind the barriers at all times. Tank's face twisted into an ugly sneer. He moved closer, deliberately invading Marcus's space. The ex-convict's breath was hot and angry, his face just inches from Marcus's perfectly composed features. Or what? Tank growled, his prison tattoos rippling as he clenched his fists. You gonna do something about it, toy soldier? Marcus didn't flinch, didn't blink. His eyes remained fixed forward as he repeated with unwavering clarity. Sir, it is requested that you step behind the barrier and maintain a respectful silence. The crowd watched in tense silence. Parents pulled their children close. Security guards spoke urgently into their radios. Jake buried his face in his mother's side, unable to watch as Tank continued his intimidation attempt. "Look at you, all stiff and proper," Tank taunted, circling Marcus like a predator. "Bet you think you're real special in that fancy uniform. Bet you think these sheep respect you." Marcus executed his next turn with perfect precision, despite Tank's looming presence mere inches away. The M14 rifle moved in perfect harmony with his body, each movement a testament to thousands of hours of practice. "I spent 5 years in military prison," Tank spat, his voice dripping with contempt. "That's more real military experience than you'll ever have, playing dress-up out here." Still, Marcus didn't react. His face remained composed, his movements precise. He completed his 21 steps, turned, and clicked his heels with parade ground perfection. "You hear me, soldier boy?" Tank's voice rose to a shout. "I'm disrespecting your precious tomb. What are you gonna do about it?" Security guards were approaching now, moving carefully through the crowd. But Tank wasn't finished. He stepped directly into Marcus's path, forcing the guard to either break his sacred routine or collide with the ex-convict's massive frame. Marcus smoothly adjusted his step, a fraction of an inch to the left, and continued his patrol. The move was so subtle, so professional, that most observers wouldn't have noticed. But Tank saw it, and it enraged him. "Had to dodge me, didn't you?" Tank sneered. "Not so perfect now, are you? Come on, tough guy. Break character. Show these people what you really are." Marcus completed another turn, his voice ringing out one final time. "Sir, this is your last warning. Step behind the barrier immediately." Tank planted his feet, arms crossed over his massive chest. "Make me, pretty boy. Show everyone what happens when someone disrespects your little marching game." The security guards were almost there. The crowd held its collective breath. But Marcus never broke character, never deviated from his sacred duty. He continued his measured pace, his movements precise, his dedication unshakable. For Marcus, this was more than ceremony. Each step honored his fallen brother. Every movement paid tribute to countless unnamed heroes. He would not let this bully tarnish their sacrifice. Not now. Not ever. Tank's face reddened with fury as his attempts at provocation failed. His voice rose to a roar. "You're nothing but a joke, a trained monkey in a costume. These people don't respect you. They're laughing at you." But Marcus remained unmoved, unchanged, unwavering in his duty. His polished shoes continued their measured rhythm against the mat. Click, step, click. His rifle remained perfectly positioned against his shoulder. His eyes stayed focused forward, seeing everything while appearing to see nothing. The sacred silence of Arlington National Cemetery had been shattered, but the dignity of the tomb guard remained unbroken. In the face of Tank's crude challenge, Marcus's discipline spoke volumes about true strength, true honor, and true respect. Tank's rage reached its boiling point. His massive frame trembled with anger as Marcus continued his disciplined patrol, refusing to acknowledge the provocations. The ex-convict's face had turned a dangerous shade of red, veins bulging at his temples. "That's it!" Tank roared. His huge hands shot forward, connecting with Marcus's chest in a violent shove. "Let's see how perfect you are now, toy soldier." The impact was brutal. Marcus stumbled backward, his polished shoes sliding on the mat. For a split second, his ceremonial stance wavered as he fought to maintain his balance. The M14 rifle tilted precariously, but through sheer willpower and thousands of hours of training, Marcus managed to recover. His face remained stoic, though a bead of sweat now traced down his temple. The crowd gasped in collective horror. Several children began crying. Phones recorded frantically as 3 security guards finally burst through the crowd, moving with urgent purpose. "Sir, on the ground now!" the lead guard shouted, reaching for his handcuffs. "Tank, please!" Lisa rushed forward, tears streaming down her face. Her son, Jake, clung to her side, his young face a mask of shame and distress. "This isn't what we came here for. This isn't what Jimmy would have wanted." The name seemed to freeze everyone in place. Tank's aggressive stance faltered slightly, a flicker of something, pain, regret, crossing his hardened features. "Ma'am, step back," one of the guards ordered, moving to separate Lisa from Tank. "No, wait." Lisa's voice cracked with emotion. "Please, you don't understand. We're here to visit Jimmy's grave. Jake's father. Tank's former cellmate." Marcus maintained his position, still perfectly composed despite the assault, but his ears caught every word. The revelation hung heavy in the afternoon air. Lisa wiped her eyes, speaking through sobs. "Jimmy Martinez. He served in Afghanistan. Tank and he were cellmates for 3 years before Jimmy got out, re-enlisted. He wanted to make things right, to be someone his son could be proud of." Tank's aggressive demeanor cracked slightly. His massive shoulders slumped as Lisa continued. "This is Jake's first time visiting his father's grave. Tank promised Jimmy he'd bring us, watch out for us. But..." She glanced at her boyfriend with disappointed eyes. "This isn't watching out for anyone, Brock. This is dishonoring everything Jimmy died for." The security guards maintained their positions, hands on their equipment, but their eyes turned to Marcus. As the senior guard on duty, it was his call whether to press charges for the assault. Marcus completed his 21-step sequence, turned with perfect precision, and for the first time, spoke outside his ceremonial script. His voice was clear, controlled, and carried the weight of authority. "These grounds are sacred," he stated, his eyes meeting Tank's. "Every soldier buried here gave everything they had for something greater than themselves, including your friend, including my brother." Tank's sneer returned, but it seemed forced now, a mask hiding deeper emotions. "Don't try to act like you understand, pretty boy. Jimmy was real, a real soldier, not some... a real soldier." Marcus cut him off, his voice sharp but measured. "Understands respect, honor, sacrifice." He paused, completing another ceremonial turn. "Your friend understood that well enough to die for it." Jake stepped forward, his young face streaked with tears. "My dad. He wrote to me before he died. Said he wanted to make things right, to be a hero." The words seemed to hit Tank like physical blows. His massive frame appeared to deflate, the angry bravado seeping away to reveal something raw and wounded underneath. Marcus addressed the security guards without breaking his ceremonial stance. "No charges. Let them go." "Sir?" The lead guard seemed uncertain. "He assaulted you during your duties. That's a serious offense." "Let them go," Marcus repeated firmly. "They have a grave to visit." Tank's face twisted with confusion, then settled into a familiar sneer. "See? Weak. Just like I said. Can't even stand up for yourself." Marcus completed another perfect turn, his voice carrying clearly across the now silent crowd. "Mercy isn't weakness, Mr. Kowalski. Your friend understood that when he chose to rebuild his life. Something to think about while you're paying your respects." Lisa gently took Tank's arm, pulling him back. "Come on, Brock. Jake needs to meet his father." Tank allowed himself to be led away, but not before spitting out one final challenge. "This isn't over, soldier boy. Next time won't be so pretty." Marcus maintained his watch, each step as precise as ever, each movement a testament to the honor and sacrifice represented by the tomb he guarded. He had shown mercy not out of fear or weakness, but because somewhere in Arlington's hallowed grounds, another unknown soldier, perhaps his own brother, deserved the same respect he gave to all the fallen. The crowd slowly dispersed, but the tension lingered in the air like the afternoon heat. Marcus continued his sacred duty, his face betraying none of the complex emotions churning beneath his disciplined exterior. For now, honor had prevailed, but Tank's parting words promised this was far from over. The morning sun cast long shadows across Arlington's pristine grounds as Marcus prepared for another day of guard duty. His movements were precise as he adjusted his uniform, but there was a new weight to his preparations. In his jacket pocket, he carried something that hadn't been there before, a small notebook and pen. 3 incidents yesterday, he muttered to himself, reviewing his notes from the previous day. The pages contained detailed descriptions, times, and dates of Tank's increasingly bold disruptions. As Marcus took his position at the tomb, he noticed the small camera cleverly mounted near the visitor area, a recent addition he'd requested from security. Its lens was barely visible, but it covered the entire ceremonial space. Right on schedule, Tank's booming voice carried across the sacred grounds. "Hey everyone, watch this! Time for the daily puppet show!" Marcus maintained his ceremonial stance as Tank approached, flanked by 3 new faces, rough-looking men with the same prison tattoos Tank wore. They lounged against the barrier chain, deliberately taking up more space than necessary. "See what I mean?" Tank gestured toward Marcus. "Won't do nothing. Can't do nothing. Just marches back and forth like a wind-up toy." Marcus continued his 21 steps, executed his turn with perfect precision. He could hear Tank's friends snickering, could see phones being raised to record what they thought would be entertaining footage. "Check this out," Tank said, pulling out a bag of chips. He crumpled the empty bag and tossed it over the chain. It landed directly in Marcus's path. Marcus maintained his bearing, stepping over the trash as if it didn't exist. His face remained impassive, but his mind recorded every detail. Time, approximately 10:45 a.m. 4 subjects, deliberate littering of memorial grounds. "Told you guys," Tank laughed. "Total robot. Bet I could do this all day and he wouldn't even blink." One of Tank's friends, a wiry man with a snake tattoo on his neck, called out, "Hey, Tank, bet you $20 you can't make him crack a smile." "Too easy," Tank growled. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. "Watch this." Tank held up his phone, playing a crude comedy routine at full volume. The inappropriate jokes echoed across the sacred space, causing several visitors to leave in disgust. Others shot angry looks at the group but were too intimidated by their appearance to intervene. Marcus completed another circuit, his steps never faltering. In his mind, he added to his growing documentation. Disturbing the peace, deliberate disruption of ceremonial duties, approximately 10:52 a.m. The harassment continued for nearly an hour. Tank and his friends made it into a game, each trying to outdo the others in their attempts to provoke a reaction. They took turns calling out insults, making crude gestures, and recording everything on their phones. "Look at this clown," Tank narrated for his phone's camera. 5 days straight and he still thinks he's fooling anybody. "We all know you're scared, toy soldier. That's why you hide behind your little routine." Marcus kept his eyes forward, his movements precise. The security cameras would be capturing everything, adding to his growing collection of evidence. Each day's incidents were carefully logged, photographed, and time-stamped. Tank's friends grew bolder, encouraged by their leader's example. They began mimicking Marcus's movements, doing exaggerated marches and salutes while visitors watched in horrified silence. "Sir, the tomb of the unknown soldier is a memorial." Marcus recited his standard warning when one of Tank's friends leaned too far over the chain. "Please respect the dignity of this sacred space." This only encouraged more laughter from the group. "Sacred space," Tank mocked. "More like sacred waste of time. Look at him, still trying to act tough." Throughout the day, Tank and his crew returned several times, each visit more disruptive than the last. They seemed to take special pleasure in timing their appearances during the changing of the guard ceremony, when visitors were most numerous. During one particularly rowdy disruption, Marcus noticed a young girl in the crowd clutching an American flag. She couldn't have been more than 7 or 8, and tears streamed down her face as Tank's group ruined what should have been a solemn moment of remembrance. Marcus maintained his composure, but his hand tightened slightly on his rifle. In his pocket, the notebook contained 7 new entries for the day, each one meticulously detailed. The security cameras continued their silent witness, building an irrefutable record of Tank's escalating behavior. As the sun began to set, Tank made one final appearance. He swaggered up to the chain alone, his friends having left earlier. "See you tomorrow, soldier boy," he called out with a smirk. "Maybe I'll bring even more friends. Make it a real party." Marcus completed his turn with perfect precision, his face revealing nothing. But in his pocket, his notebook told the real story. A week's worth of harassment, dozens of incidents, all carefully documented and preserved. Tank might think he was demonstrating his dominance, but with each disruption, he was only adding to the evidence being collected against him. The next morning brought a disturbing new development to Arlington National Cemetery. Tank stood near his usual spot, but this time he held his phone differently, not just recording, but live streaming to an audience Marcus couldn't see. What's up, everyone? We're back with your boy Tank, and today we're gonna have some fun with Arlington's very own toy soldier. Tank's voice boomed across the sacred grounds, louder than usual as he performed for his virtual audience. Marcus maintained his disciplined march, 21 steps, precise turn, 21 steps back. The morning sun glinted off his polished shoes and bayonet as he executed each movement with perfect precision. "Look at this guy, everyone," Tank narrated to his phone. "Check out how he walks like he's got a stick up his, well, you know where." He laughed loudly, checking the comments scrolling on his screen. "Oh man, you guys are loving this, already got 500 viewers." Several visitors shot disapproving looks at Tank, but his imposing size and prison tattoos kept them from speaking up. A young couple quietly ushered their children away from the area, the mother shaking her head in disgust. "Hey chat, watch this!" Tank crossed dangerously close to the barrier chain. "What you gonna do about it, soldier boy? Your little march more important than stopping me?" He waved his hand inches from Marcus's face as he passed. Marcus kept his eyes fixed forward, his expression neutral despite the provocation. Inside his jacket pocket, his notebook recorded another incident. 9:15 a.m. Subject Tank Kowalski initiating livestream broadcast, deliberately attempting to provoke response. "Yo, everyone watching needs to share this stream." Tank grinned at his phone. "Let's show the world what a joke this place is. All this ceremony for what? Some unknown dead guys?" The crude comment about the unknown soldiers sent a ripple of shock through the gathered visitors. An elderly veteran in a wheelchair turned away, his shoulders slumping in sadness. Tank's live stream continued for hours. His viewer count grew as he encouraged his audience to mock the ceremony. "Come on down to Arlington, everyone. We've got our own personal puppet show here. Watch him march back and forth like a trained monkey." Comments flooded Tank's stream, some encouraging his behavior, others expressing outrage. But the controversy only seemed to fuel Tank's performance. He began taking requests from his viewers, acting out their suggestions to disrupt the sacred atmosphere. "Oh man, good idea at Soldier Hater 92. Tank laughed, reading his phone. "Hey toy soldier, my chat wants to know, how many of these unknown soldiers actually died running away? Bet that's why they're unknown, right?" Marcus's jaw tightened slightly, but his steps never faltered. The security cameras continued their silent recording as Tank's harassment reached new lows. By afternoon, clips from Tank's live stream had spread across social media. Some viewers treated Arlington's sacred ceremony as entertainment, treating Marcus like a street performer to be mocked. Others expressed outrage, but their anger only encouraged Tank further. "We're trending, everyone," Tank announced proudly to his stream. "Keep sharing. Let's show everyone how tough this toy soldier thinks he is." He pulled out a small American flag he'd brought and made a show of using it to clean his boots. Marcus watched from the corner of his eye as Tank's disrespect of the flag drew gasps from nearby visitors. In his pocket, his pen scratched another entry. 2:30 p.m., subject deliberately desecrating American flag for social media audience. "Chat wants to know what's under that fancy uniform," Tank taunted, reading his screen. "Bet it's just some scared little boy playing dress-up. Probably never served a day in his life, right, chat?" The live stream continued into the evening. Tank's audience grew, and with it, his behavior became more outrageous. He began mimicking the changing of the guard ceremony for his viewers, making crude gestures during the sacred ritual. "Look at this nonsense," Tank narrated as the relief commander inspected Marcus's rifle during the ceremony. "All this fuss over a gun that probably isn't even loaded. Hey, soldier boy, want to prove me wrong? Show us if it's real." Tourists who had come to pay their respects found themselves unwilling participants in Tank's social media spectacle. Many left quickly, their faces showing disappointment and anger at having their moment of remembrance ruined. "Almost 10,000 viewers now," Tank announced proudly. "Tomorrow we'll make it 20,000. Maybe I'll bring some friends, really give everyone a show worth watching." As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the tomb, Tank made one final performance for his audience. He stood directly in Marcus's path, forcing him to adjust his route slightly. "See that, everyone?" He had to change his precious routine. Tank gloated to his phone. "Not so perfect now, are you, toy soldier? Tomorrow we'll see what else we can make him do." Marcus completed his shift without breaking character once, but his notebook told the true story of the day. Dozens of incidents, each one carefully documented, each one more disrespectful than the last. Tank had crossed a new line, turning Arlington's sacred ground into social media entertainment, and Marcus knew in his heart that worse was yet to come. The morning sun cast long shadows across Arlington National Cemetery as Tank approached the tomb of the unknown soldier with a new gleam in his eyes. His girlfriend Sarah trailed behind him, her face etched with worry as she watched him pull a thick black marker from his pocket. "Brock, please," she whispered, grabbing his arm. "This isn't right. You've made your point already." Tank yanked his arm away. "Made my point? I'm just getting started." He twirled the marker between his fingers. "Time to leave my mark on this place." Marcus stood at attention, maintaining his guard position as Tank approached. Through his peripheral vision, he could see the marker in Tank's hand and immediately understood the threat it posed to the sacred marble tomb. "Those gang symbols you got tattooed in prison?" Sarah's voice cracked. "You can't put those here. This is hallowed ground." "Watch me," Tank growled, moving toward the tomb with deliberate steps. "Time to show everyone who really runs this place." Marcus's heart pounded beneath his perfectly pressed uniform. In all his years of service, no one had ever attempted to deface the tomb itself. He began mentally reviewing the official response protocols while maintaining his ceremonial stance. Tank crossed the barrier chain, marker uncapped. "Hey, toy soldier, about to give your precious tomb a little decoration. What you gonna do about it?" "Sir, it is forbidden to cross the barrier or deface the tomb," Marcus announced in the authorized warning tone. "Step back immediately." Sarah covered her face with her hands. "Brock, stop this. Think about Tommy. His body could have ended up here if they hadn't found him. Show some respect." But Tank was beyond listening. He pressed the marker against the white marble, ready to make his first mark. "Time to make this place mine." Marcus moved with practiced precision, positioning himself between Tank and the tomb while maintaining ceremonial bearing. "Sir, you are attempting to vandalize a national monument. Security has been notified." Tank's face reddened with rage. "Move aside, toy soldier. Unless you want to find out what else I learned in prison besides drawing." The gathering crowd watched in horror as Tank tried to reach around Marcus to mark the tomb. Marcus shifted his rifle to guard position, using it as a barrier while staying within protocol. The movement was smooth, ceremonial, but effective, keeping Tank's marker inches from the sacred marble. "Last warning, sir," Marcus stated firmly. "Step back from the tomb." Sarah grabbed Tank's arm again. "Please, baby, this isn't you. You're better than this now." For a moment, Tank hesitated, looking at her tearful face. Then his expression hardened. "Better. I'm exactly who I've always been." He shoved her away, causing her to stumble backward. "And I'm not letting some pretend soldier tell me what I can't do." Marcus maintained his position, documenting every detail in his mind for the report he would have to file. Tank's attempts to mark the tomb, his girlfriend's intervention, the exact time and nature of the threats. All of it would need to be recorded. Security officers appeared at the edges of the plaza, moving carefully to avoid escalating the situation. Tank saw them and took a step back, but his face showed no remorse. "This ain't over, toy soldier," he snarled, pocketing his marker. "You think you won something here? Tomorrow's another day." Sarah reached for him again. "Please, let's just go. This place means something to people who lost loved ones, like we lost Tommy." "Tommy was weak," Tank spat. "Just like this whole place is weak. Just like toy soldier here is weak." He pointed at Marcus. "And I'm gonna keep coming back until everyone sees it." The security officers approached, but Marcus gave them a subtle signal. He wouldn't press charges, not yet. Tank backed away from the tomb, dragging Sarah with him. "You're going to get arrested if you keep this up," she pleaded as they walked away. "Think about what you're doing. I know exactly what I'm doing, Tank's voice carried across the plaza. Teaching a lesson about respect. Real respect, not this fancy marching nonsense. After they disappeared from view, Marcus completed his shift with perfect precision. But as soon as he was relieved, he headed straight to the guard office to file his report. His hand was steady as he documented every detail of Tank's attempt to vandalize the tomb. Subject attempted to mark tomb with gang symbols. Girlfriend identified subject's connection to fallen soldier named Tommy. Direct threats made regarding future incidents. Marcus paused in his writing, remembering Sarah's tears and Tank's dismissal of them. The man's hatred seemed to run deeper than simple disrespect. There was something broken in him, something that made him want to destroy anything that represented honor or sacrifice. But regardless of Tank's motivations, the tomb itself had nearly been defaced. The line between harassment and criminal activity had been crossed. Marcus completed his report with a heavy heart, knowing that next time he might have no choice but to have Tank arrested. The afternoon sun cast shadows across his desk as he signed the official document. Outside, the changing of the guard continued its eternal vigil, honoring the fallen with every precise step and movement. The sacred duty remained unchanged, despite those who would try to diminish it. Marcus sat at his desk in the guard quarters, sifting through military records on his computer. After Tank's attempt to vandalize the tomb, he needed to understand more about Tommy, the fallen soldier Tank's girlfriend had mentioned. Something about the situation nagged at him, demanding deeper investigation. His fingers moved swiftly across the keyboard, searching for soldiers named Tommy who had died in Afghanistan. The list was painfully long. He added filters, soldiers with connections to inmates, narrowing the time frame to Tank's prison stay. The screen flickered and a file appeared. Marcus's eyes widened as he read the name, Private Danny Kowalski. Not Tommy, Danny. His heart began to pound as he saw the last name. "It can't be," he whispered, clicking through the documents. The truth unfolded before him in stark military prose. Private Daniel Kowalski, younger brother of Brock Tank Kowalski. Danny had enlisted while his older brother was serving time for aggravated assault. The young soldier had died in Afghanistan 3 years ago during Tank's incarceration. Marcus leaned back in his chair, the weight of this revelation pressing against his chest. Tank's cellmate hadn't just been some random soldier, it had been his own brother. He read deeper into Danny's service record. The young private had enlisted at 18, choosing military service as an escape from the poverty that had pushed his older brother toward crime. Letters from Danny to his incarcerated brother were included in the file, dozens of them full of hope and unwavering belief in Tank's potential for change. "I know you can be better, Brock," one letter read. "The brother who used to protect me is still in there. I'm serving our country now, making something of myself. When you get out, we'll both be men our parents would have been proud of." Marcus's vision blurred as he read Danny's words. The young soldier had never given up on his brother, writing regularly even when Tank's responses grew sporadic. The last letter was dated just 3 days before Danny's death. A knock at the door startled him. "Sir, your shift starts in 20 minutes. "Thank you," Marcus called back, but his eyes remained fixed on the screen. He pulled up Tank's prison records next. The notification of Danny's death had reached Tank while he was still incarcerated. The prison psychologist's notes painted a grim picture: complete emotional shutdown, followed by increasingly aggressive behavior. Tank had been unable to attend his brother's funeral due to his imprisonment. "That's why he's targeting the ceremony," Marcus murmured, pieces falling into place. "Every precise step, every honor we show the fallen, it's everything he couldn't do for Danny." He thought back to Tank's escalating harassment, seeing it now through a different lens. The man's rage wasn't just about intimidation or disrespect. It was guilt, raw and festering, transformed into aggression. While Danny had died serving his country, Tank had been locked in a cell, powerless to protect his younger brother one final time. Marcus opened another document, Danny's posthumous commendation. The young private had died saving 3 members of his unit, displaying the same protective instinct Tank had once shown toward him as children. before crime and poverty had torn their paths apart. "Sir?" The same voice at the door. 15 minutes. Marcus nodded but continued reading. Danny's commanding officer had written a personal note about the young soldier's unwavering faith in his imprisoned brother. Even in his final days, Danny had spoken of Tank's potential for redemption, sharing childhood stories of his protective older brother with his fellow soldiers. The photos in Danny's file told their own story. A young boy grinning beside his bigger brother, a proud new private in his dress uniform, and finally, the flag-draped coffin that Tank had never seen. Marcus thought of Tank's girlfriend's tears at the tomb, her pleas for him to show respect. She had known the truth all along, known that Tank's hatred of the ceremony masked a deeper pain he couldn't face. Every mock salute, every crude joke Tank had made suddenly carried new meaning. His attempts to diminish the sacred duty of guarding the tomb were a reflection of his own perceived failure to protect Danny. Each ceremonial step Marcus took was a reminder of the brother Tank had lost while behind bars. 5 minutes, sir." Marcus closed the files and stood, straightening his uniform with practiced precision. He would guard the tomb today with new understanding, knowing that somewhere beneath Tank's aggressive exterior was a brother drowning in guilt and grief. The morning sun caught his medals as he stepped outside, ready to assume his post. Today's ceremony would honor not just the unknown soldiers, but also Private Daniel Kowalski, a young man who never lost faith in his brother's capacity for good, even when that brother had lost faith in himself. As Marcus marched toward the tomb, he understood that Tank's real battle wasn't with him or the ceremony. It was with the guilt he carried, heavier than any prison sentence, over failing the brother who had believed in him until the very end. Marcus stood at his post perfectly still as protocol demanded, but his mind churned with the weight of what he now knew. Tank approached from the visitors area, his heavy boots deliberately loud on the stone path. Today he wore a sleeveless shirt that displayed his prison tattoos, including one Marcus hadn't noticed before, DK, inked over his heart. Those initials held new meaning now, Danny Kowalski, the brother Tank had lost while serving time. "Hey, toy soldier," Tank called out, his voice carrying across the sacred ground. "Still playing dress-up?" A small group of tourists shifted uncomfortably, moving away from Tank's imposing presence. Marcus maintained his stance, executing his 21 steps with precision. Each movement felt different now, knowing that Tank's brother had died serving the very values this ceremony represented. Behind Tank's mocking grin, Marcus could see the pain eating away at him, pain that had twisted into anger and contempt. Tank pulled out his phone, starting another live stream. "Look at this joke, everyone. Standing guard over nothing while real soldiers die in actual combat." His voice cracked slightly on the word soldiers, something Marcus wouldn't have noticed before. As Marcus turned to face the tomb for his 21-second pause, he caught sight of Tank's girlfriend hanging back by the barriers, her face lined with worry. She knew the truth too, knew that every insult Tank hurled was really aimed at himself. "Come on, break character." Tank moved closer, his massive frame casting a shadow across the marble steps. "Show everybody what a fraud this whole thing is." Marcus continued his patrol, maintaining protocol while observing Tank's increasingly erratic behavior. The man's hands shook as he filmed, his movements becoming more agitated with each passing minute. He was unraveling, and Marcus couldn't help but wonder if the anniversary of Danny's death was approaching. "You think this helps anybody?" Tank's voice rose, drawing concerned looks from the cemetery staff. "Standing here like a statue while guys like my..." He caught himself, face flushing red. "While real heroes die out there?" Marcus felt the weight of his rifle, the pressure of his perfect uniform, the responsibility of his duty. Every fiber of his training told him to focus solely on his sacred task, to shut out Tank's presence completely. But now he heard the grief behind every taunt, saw the guilt driving each provocation. Tank circled closer, his livestream audience growing. "Maybe I should teach you what real combat looks like, huh?" His threat carried an edge of desperation that hadn't been there before. "Show everyone how tough you really are?" A security guard started moving their way, but Marcus gave a subtle shake of his head. Tank wasn't just trying to provoke a fight anymore. He was crying out for punishment, for someone to hold him accountable for failing his brother. "What's wrong, soldier boy?" Tank's voice cracked again. "Too scared to face me like a man? Bet you've never even seen real action. Bet you've never lost anyone who actually mattered." Marcus completed another 21 steps, each one precise and measured. He thought of his own brother, lost in Afghanistan. Thought of Danny Kowalski, dying to save his unit while Tank sat in a prison cell. Two brothers, two different paths, both ending in tragedy. Tank's girlfriend called out softly, "Brock, please. That's enough." "No!" Tank whirled on her. "He needs to understand this is all fake. All this ceremony, all this honor, it doesn't bring anybody back." His voice broke completely on the last word. Marcus maintained his vigil, but his heart ached at the raw pain in Tank's voice. The man was trapped in a prison of his own making now, unable to forgive himself for not being there when Danny needed him most. Tank turned back to Marcus, his live stream forgotten at his side. "You stand here day after day, pretending to guard the dead. But where were you when they were alive? Where was anybody when they needed help?" The question hung in the air, and Marcus knew Tank was really asking himself, "Where was I when Danny needed me?" Security was moving in again, but Tank barely seemed to notice. His massive frame trembled with emotion he couldn't contain. All this honor and respect, it's too late. It doesn't matter anymore. None of it brings them back. Marcus completed his patrol pattern, precise and unwavering, but each step felt heavy with the knowledge that Tank's anger wasn't truly directed at him or the ceremony. The man was raging against his own failures, his own absence when it mattered most. Tank's girlfriend finally approached him, touching his arm gently. "Danny wouldn't want this," she whispered, but Tank jerked away as if burned. "Don't say his name," Tank growled, but his voice was thick with unshed tears. "Not here. Not in this place." Marcus kept his face impassive, maintaining protocol even as his heart ached for both brothers, the one who died serving his country and the one who lived tormented by guilt. Tank's harassment wasn't just a challenge to authority anymore. It was a cry for help from a man drowning in regret. But Marcus couldn't break character, couldn't abandon his duty to reach out. He could only continue his sacred task, honoring all fallen soldiers, including Private Daniel Kowalski, while Tank struggled with demons he couldn't face. The autumn wind carried a bitter chill across Arlington National Cemetery as Marcus maintained his vigilant watch. A group of Gold Star mothers had gathered near the tomb of the unknown soldier, their black dresses and gold star pins glinting in the morning light. They stood together, finding comfort in their shared grief, some holding photographs of their fallen children. The peace of their mourning shattered when Tank stumbled through the entrance. Marcus spotted him immediately, the ex-convict's usual intimidating swagger replaced by an unsteady stagger. Tank's eyes were bloodshot, his movements erratic. Most alarming was the rusty crowbar clutched in his right hand. "Where's our toy soldier today?" Tank's voice boomed across the sacred ground, slurred but menacing. Several visitors quickly moved away, sensing danger. The Gold Star mothers drew closer together, their faces showing concern. Marcus continued his measured patrol, hyper-aware of Tank's approach. The man reeked of alcohol, and his muscled frame swayed as he advanced toward the tomb. Security guards were already moving in, speaking quietly into their radios. "Time to show everyone what real soldiers look like." Tank swung the crowbar in a wide arc, causing nearby visitors to gasp and retreat. "All this fancy marble, all these pretty ceremonies, it's all fake." One of the Gold Star mothers, an elderly woman with silver hair, clutched her son's photograph tighter. Another reached for her hand, but their quiet moment of solidarity caught Tank's attention. "What are you looking at?" He turned toward the group, crowbar raised. "You think this place means anything? You think any of this matters?" Marcus's training kicked in as he assessed the immediate threat. Tank was between him and the group of mothers, who now huddled together in fear. Security was responding, but they were still too far away to intervene. "This whole place is a lie." Tank stumbled closer to the tomb, raising the crowbar higher. "I'll show you what it really means. Nothing." He swung the metal bar toward the sacred marble, missing by inches. A security alert blared through the cemetery speaker system, announcing an immediate lockdown. But Tank seemed energized by the chaos he'd created. He turned toward the Gold Star mothers, who had no clear path to escape. "Your kids died for nothing," Tank shouted, gesturing wildly with the crowbar. "Just like Danny. Just like all of them." His voice cracked with rage and grief. One of the mothers stepped forward despite her fear. "Our children died with honor," she said firmly, though her hands trembled. "They died protecting others." "Honor?" Tank spat the word like poison. "Where's the honor in dying while your brother sits in prison? Where's the honor in that?" He swung the crowbar again, causing the women to flinch back. Marcus maintained his post but shifted his position slightly, placing himself between Tank and the group of mothers. His movement caught Tank's attention. "There he is. Our perfect soldier." Tank's words dripped with contempt. "Still following your precious protocol while these people are in danger? Still pretending nothing bad can happen in your sacred space?" The crowbar whistled through the air as Tank advanced on the tomb. "I'll show you what real violence looks like. Show you what my brother really died for." Security officers were closing in from all directions, but Tank's erratic movements and the weapon in his hand made them hesitate. The situation had escalated beyond simple harassment. This was now a federal crime in progress with civilian lives at risk. "Stand back," Tank warned as officers approached, waving the crowbar threateningly. "Nobody move. I'm going to show everyone what this place really means." The Gold Star mothers remained trapped, unable to reach safety without passing directly by Tank. One began to quietly cry, holding a photo of a young Marine in dress blues. The sound seemed to penetrate Tank's alcohol-fueled rage. He turned toward them again, his face twisted in anguish. "Why are you crying? This is what war really looks like. This is what happened to Danny. No ceremony, no honor, just violence and death." Marcus watched Tank's grip tighten on the crowbar as he moved closer to the mothers. The ex-convict's massive frame blocked their escape route completely now. His eyes were wild, filled with a dangerous mix of grief and alcohol-fueled rage. "You want to see real soldiers?" Tank raised the crowbar higher. "You want to see what really happens to them?" The elderly mother with silver hair stood her ground, tears streaming down her face as she held up her son's photograph. "We already know," she said softly. "We live with it every day." Tank's hand trembled, the crowbar wavering in his grip as he stared at the image of another fallen soldier, another lost son. But the alcohol in his system seemed to override any moment of clarity. He turned back toward the tomb, stumbling forward with the crowbar raised high. "Time to show everyone the truth," he shouted, his voice echoing across the now silent cemetery. "Time to break down all these lies." Marcus watched in horror as Tank's rampage intensified. The ex-convict's movements became more unpredictable, the crowbar cutting dangerous arcs through the air. The Gold Star mothers huddled together, their faces pale with fear as Tank's massive frame blocked their only escape route. "You want to see what war really does?" Tank bellowed, his words slurring together. He swung the crowbar in a wide circle, causing several of the mothers to stumble backward. But one elderly woman, clutching a framed photograph of her son, couldn't move quickly enough. The crowbar whistled through the air, heading straight for her fragile frame. Time seemed to slow as Marcus made the decision that would end his perfect record. 3 years of flawless protocol dissolved in an instant as he abandoned his post, moving with the swift precision of his combat training. Marcus crossed the distance in 3 rapid strides, reaching the elderly mother just as the crowbar descended. He pushed her gently but firmly aside, hearing her startled gasp as she fell safely into the arms of another mother. The crowbar missed her by inches. "Step away from the civilians," Marcus commanded, his voice carrying the authority of his military training. He positioned himself between Tank and the group of mothers, creating a human barrier. Tank's bloodshot eyes widened in surprise, then narrowed with rage. Look who finally decided to play. He lunged forward, swinging the crowbar at Marcus's head. Marcus ducked smoothly under the wild swing, years of combat training taking over. He moved inside Tank's reach, where the crowbar would be less effective. Tank may have had size and strength, but his movements were sloppy and impaired by alcohol. "Get the civilians to safety," Marcus called out to the security officers who were converging on the scene. As they began escorting the Gold Star mothers away, Tank roared in frustration and charged. Marcus sidestepped the bull rush, using Tank's momentum against him. The larger man stumbled, his crowbar swinging wildly. The metal bar caught one of the memorial wreaths that surrounded the tomb, sending it flying. Fresh flowers scattered across the sacred ground as the wreath frame cracked against the marble steps. "Property damage at a federal monument," Marcus stated calmly, maintaining his defensive stance. "That's a serious charge, Tank. Or should I call you Brock Kowalski?" Tank froze for a split second at the sound of his real name. "How do you—" Marcus didn't let him finish. He used Tank's moment of confusion to close the distance, executing a precise arm lock that targeted the hand holding the crowbar. The move wasn't meant to hurt, only to disarm. "I know about Danny," Marcus said quietly, applying careful pressure. "I know he was your brother." Tank's grip on the crowbar loosened, but his face contorted with rage. "Don't you say his name?" He tried to wrench free, but Marcus held firm. "He died with honor," Marcus continued, maintaining the hold. "But this isn't honoring his memory." The crowbar clattered to the ground as Tank's fingers finally released it. Marcus kicked it away, where a security officer quickly retrieved it. But Tank wasn't finished. He threw his weight backward, trying to break Marcus's grip. Marcus adjusted smoothly, using Tank's own momentum once again to take him to the ground. He pinned the larger man using technique rather than strength, keeping him secured without causing unnecessary pain. "Your brother never gave up on you," Marcus said as Tank struggled beneath him. Even in Afghanistan, he talked about his big brother. Believed you could change. Tank's struggles began to weaken. "Shut up," he growled, but his voice cracked. "You don't know anything." "I know he loved you," Marcus replied firmly. "And I know this isn't what he would want." The fight seemed to drain from Tank's body. His muscles went slack under Marcus's hold, and a sound escaped him, something between a sob and a growl. Security officers moved in with handcuffs, and Marcus carefully transferred control to them. As they helped Tank to his feet, Marcus surveyed the damage. The scattered flowers from the destroyed wreath seemed to mock the sanctity of the space. The elderly mother Tank had nearly struck was being tended to by paramedics, though she appeared shaken but unhurt. Tank didn't resist as the officers began leading him away. His shoulders slumped, his earlier bravado replaced by something that looked like defeat, or perhaps, finally, remorse. The weight of his actions and their consequences seemed to be sinking in. Marcus watched them go, acutely aware that he had broken his perfect record of protocol adherence. But as he looked at the Gold Star mothers being safely escorted from the scene, he knew he'd made the right choice. Some things were more important than perfect records. He walked over and knelt beside the damaged wreath, carefully gathering the scattered flowers. Each bloom represented someone's tribute to the fallen, and even in their scattered state, they deserved respect. The marble steps of the tomb stood unmarked by Tank's failed attack, as if the sacred space itself had withstood the assault on its dignity. 2 days after the incident at Arlington National Cemetery, Marcus sat in the federal prosecutor's office, surrounded by stacks of meticulously organized evidence. His phone lay on the desk, displaying dozens of dated photographs and video clips that documented Tank's escalating harassment over the past weeks. "This is remarkably thorough, Sergeant Delacroix," the prosecutor said, leafing through the printed timeline Marcus had maintained. "You documented everything from day one?" Marcus nodded, his posture military straight even in the casual setting. "Yes, ma'am. After the first incident, I suspected he might return. I wanted to ensure any future violations were properly recorded." The prosecutor, a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s, picked up one of the photographs. It showed Tank attempting to place gang symbols on the tomb. "This alone would be enough for federal charges," she noted. "But combined with the assault and endangerment of civilians—" She shook her head. "Mr. Kowalski is facing significant time." Marcus watched as she pulled up the security footage from the crowbar incident. The black and white video clearly showed Tank's erratic behavior, the endangered Gold Star mothers, and the destruction of the memorial wreath. The minimum sentence for his combined charges is 7 years in federal prison, the prosecutor explained. Given his prior record and the severity of these offenses, he'll likely face more. What specific charges is he facing? Marcus asked, maintaining his professional demeanor despite the weight of the situation. The prosecutor lifted a document. Multiple counts of criminal harassment, vandalism of federal property, attempted assault with a deadly weapon, endangering civilians on federal grounds, and desecration of a national cemetery. She looked up at Marcus. Your documentation shows a clear pattern of escalation. This wasn't a one-time incident. It was calculated harassment that put visitors in danger. Marcus thought about Tank's brother Danny, about the guilt and pain that had driven Tank's actions. But he also thought about the elderly Gold Star mother, who had nearly been struck by the crowbar, the sacred ground that had been desecrated, and the weeks of harassment that had threatened the dignity of the tomb of the unknown soldier. Will you testify at his arraignment? The prosecutor asked. Your statement about the pattern of harassment would be crucial. Yes, ma'am, Marcus replied without hesitation. I'll testify. 3 days later, Marcus entered the federal courthouse in his full dress uniform. The arraignment was scheduled for 9 in the morning, and he arrived 30 minutes early, as precise in this duty as he was in his guard duties at Arlington. Tank was led into the courtroom in shackles, his massive frame somehow diminished by the orange jumpsuit. His eyes met Marcus's briefly, but this time there was no challenge in them, only a hollow emptiness that spoke of someone finally facing the consequences of their actions. When Marcus took the stand, he spoke clearly and professionally about the weeks of harassment. He described Tank's escalating behavior, the social media broadcasts that had encouraged others to disrespect the sacred ground, and the final incident that had endangered innocent civilians. The defendant's actions showed a clear pattern of intentional harassment and escalating criminal behavior, Marcus testified. He repeatedly violated the sanctity of Arlington National Cemetery, encouraged others to do the same through social media, and ultimately put Gold Star mothers in physical danger. The judge, a veteran herself, listened with growing concern as Marcus detailed each incident. When he described Tank's attempt to place gang symbols on the tomb, her expression hardened visibly. The evidence indicates premeditated and escalating criminal behavior, the judge stated after hearing all testimony. Mr. Kowalski's actions show a disturbing disregard for both federal law and the sacred nature of Arlington National Cemetery. Tank stood with his public defender as the judge continued. Given the severity of the charges and the defendant's prior criminal record, bail is denied. Mr. Kowalski will be held in federal custody pending trial. As Tank was led away, Marcus noticed Tank's girlfriend in the back of the courtroom, tears streaming down her face. Her teenage son sat beside her, his expression a mix of anger and disappointment. They were casualties too, Marcus realized, victims of Tank's inability to process his grief and guilt over his brother's death in a healthy way. The prosecutor approached Marcus after the arraignment. The documentation you provided is rock solid, she said. Combined with the security footage and witness statements from the Gold Star mothers, we have an airtight case. Mr. Kowalski will face the full consequences of his actions. Marcus nodded, feeling no satisfaction, only a solemn sense that justice would be served. His duty, both as a tomb guard and as a witness, had been to protect the sanctity of Arlington and ensure the safety of its visitors. He had fulfilled that duty, even if it had required breaking protocol in the final confrontation. The evidence he had gathered over those difficult weeks would ensure that Tank's crimes against Arlington National Cemetery and its visitors would not go unpunished. It wasn't about vengeance. It was about maintaining the sacred trust of his position and protecting the dignity of those who had given their lives for their country. Marcus stood outside the holding cell area of the Federal Detention Center, his dress uniform perfectly pressed despite the late hour. He held a manila folder containing Danny Kowalski's military records, his heart heavy with the weight of what he was about to reveal. "You sure about this, Sergeant?" the guard asked, keys jingling in his hand. "Yes, sir. I need to speak with him before the arraignment tomorrow." The guard led Marcus down a dimly lit corridor to Tank's cell. The massive ex-convict sat on his bunk, his orange jumpsuit a stark contrast to the institutional gray walls. When he saw Marcus, Tank's face twisted into a sneer. "Come to gloat, toy soldier?" Tank's voice was hoarse, lacking its usual aggressive edge. Marcus shook his head. "Number, I came to talk about Danny." The name hit Tank like a physical blow. He stiffened, his hands clenching into fists. "You don't know anything about my brother." "Actually, I do." Marcus pulled out a photograph from the folder. It showed a young soldier in full combat gear smiling broadly at the camera. Private Daniel Kowalski, 23 years old, served with the 101st Airborne Division in Afghanistan. Tank stood up slowly, moving to the bars. "Where did you get that?" "I knew Danny through veteran support networks. He used to come to our meetings when he was home on leave." Marcus met Tank's eyes. "He talked about you all the time." Tank's expression flickered between anger and confusion. "You're lying." Marcus opened the folder, removing more documents. Danny was saving money from every paycheck. He had a special account set up. He held up a bank statement. He was putting aside funds for your legal defense, trying to get your sentence reduced. Tank's hands trembled as he reached through the bars, taking the statement. His eyes scanned the numbers, the regular deposits marked, "For Brock's appeal." "He never gave up on you," Marcus continued softly. "Every meeting he'd tell us about his big brother, how you protected him when you were kids, how you took beatings from your old man so he wouldn't have to." Tank's massive frame seemed to deflate. He sank onto his bunk, still clutching the bank statement. "He never told me about any of this. He was going to surprise you. He had almost enough saved up when—" Marcus paused, letting the unspoken words hang in the air. "When he died." Tank's voice cracked. "While I was sitting in prison for being a stupid thug." Marcus pulled out more papers from the folder. "These are letters Danny wrote to his commanding officer. He mentioned you in every single one." He began to read. "My brother made mistakes, sir, but he's got a good heart. He just never had anyone believe in him except me." Tank pressed his palms against his eyes, but tears leaked through anyway. His massive shoulders began to shake. "Danny believed in you until the end," Marcus said quietly. "He knew the real you, the protective big brother who sacrificed himself to keep him safe. That's who he was fighting to save." "Stop," Tank whispered, but Marcus continued. "He carried your picture with him in Afghanistan, called you his motivation, said every time things got tough, he thought about showing you there was a better way to live." Tank's composure finally shattered. A raw sob tore from his throat as years of buried guilt and shame broke through his carefully constructed walls of anger. "I let him down," he choked out. "My little brother needed me to be better, and I let him down." Marcus watched as the man who had terrorized Arlington National Cemetery for weeks crumbled under the weight of his own remorse. Tank's tough guy facade dissolved completely, leaving only a broken brother drowning in regret. "He was so much better than me," Tank managed between sobs. "He made something of himself, and what did I do? I got locked up. I wasn't there when he needed me. I wasn't there when he—" His voice failed him. Marcus stepped closer to the bars. "Danny never saw it that way. He said you were his hero, that everything good in him came from watching you protect him when you were young." Tank looked up, his face streaked with tears. "Why are you telling me all this? After everything I did to you, to that cemetery?" "Because Danny would have wanted you to know," Marcus replied simply. "He believed you could change. He died believing in his big brother's capacity for good." The sound Tank made was somewhere between a laugh and a sob. "Some brother I turned out to be. Look at me now, facing federal charges for disrespecting the same uniform my little brother died wearing." Marcus set the folder down near the bars. "These are copies of Danny's records, his letters, his photographs. They're yours if you want them." Tank reached for the folder with shaking hands, treating it like something precious and fragile. He opened it slowly, revealing more photos of Danny in uniform, letters filled with his familiar handwriting, commendations from his commanding officers. "I'm sorry," Tank whispered, though whether he was speaking to Marcus or to Danny's memory wasn't clear. "I'm so sorry." Marcus stood quietly, watching as Tank Kowalski, the man who had seemed untouchable in his anger, finally confronted the truth he'd been running from. In that holding cell, surrounded by evidence of his brother's love and faith in him, Tank faced his demons at last. 2 weeks after their holding cell conversation, Tank sat across from Marcus in the federal courthouse's conference room. His lawyer shuffled papers while the federal prosecutor laid out the terms of the plea agreement. 3 years in federal prison, the prosecutor stated clearly, followed by 5 years of supervised community service at Arlington National Cemetery. You'll work maintenance under strict supervision, groundskeeping, basic repairs, general upkeep. 1 violation sends you back to complete a full 7-year sentence. Do you understand these terms, Mr. Kowalski? Tank nodded, his massive frame somehow smaller in his court-issued suit. "Yes, ma'am." His voice carried none of its former aggression. "But I don't understand why Arlington would even consider letting me work there after what I did." Marcus spoke up from his side of the table. "Because I recommended it. Your brother gave his life serving this country. Working at Arlington isn't meant as punishment. It's an opportunity to honor his memory the right way." Tank's eyes grew damp, but he blinked back the tears. "I don't deserve a second chance." "Danny thought you did," Marcus replied quietly. "That's good enough for me." The papers were signed, fingerprints taken, and dates set. As Tank prepared to be led back to his cell, he turned to Marcus. "I keep thinking about all those Gold Star mothers I endangered. About how I almost hurt those women who lost their kids serving our country. I was so angry I couldn't see straight." "You'll have time to make it right," Marcus assured him. 3 years to think about who you want to be when you come out." Sarah, Tank's girlfriend, waited outside with her teenage son, Tommy. When Tank emerged in handcuffs, Tommy didn't look away like he had during previous court appearances. Instead, he stepped forward. "I've been visiting Dad's grave every week," Tommy said, "learning about what it really means to wear the uniform. It's not about looking tough or scary. It's about protecting people who can't protect themselves." Tank's voice was rough with emotion. "Your dad knew that, so did my brother. I was too stupid to see it until now." Sarah squeezed Tank's arm before the marshals led him away. "We'll visit you, and when you're out, we'll all visit Danny together. The right way this time." 3 days later, Marcus resumed his ceremonial duties at the tomb of the unknown soldier. His shoes gleamed with fresh polish, his uniform pristine as ever. But now, when he performed the 21 steps of his sacred walk, he carried new understanding of how grief could twist a person's soul. The following Sunday, he spotted Sarah and Tommy among the respectful crowd during the changing of the guard ceremony. Tommy stood straight-backed, watching with clear-eyed reverence. When the ceremony ended, they approached Marcus. "Tank asked us to give you this," Sarah said, holding out an envelope. "He wanted you to be the first to read it." Later that evening, Marcus opened the letter in the guard quarters. "Dear Marcus, I've spent every night since our talk thinking about Danny, about the brother I failed and the man I became. I keep remembering how he looked up to me when we were kids, how he believed I could be better than our old man. Instead, I turned into something worse. I want to know everything about his service, the missions he went on, the men he served with, the person he became while I was wasting my life behind bars. Maybe understanding who he was in uniform will help me figure out who I'm supposed to be. I know I don't deserve forgiveness for what I did at Arlington. Those Gold Star mothers, the sacred ground I disrespected, the ceremony I tried to destroy. I'll carry that shame forever. But Danny never gave up on me, and somehow you saw what he saw. 3 years isn't enough to make up for my crimes, but it's a start. When I get out, I want to honor my brother's memory through service, not violence. I want Tommy to be proud of the man I become, the way Danny would have been. Thank you for showing me the truth about my brother. Thank you for giving me a chance to make things right. Brock Kowalski." Marcus carefully folded the letter and placed it in his uniform pocket, close to his heart. Outside his window, the evening light painted Arlington's endless rows of white headstones in soft gold. Somewhere out there, Danny Kowalski rested among his fellow soldiers, his faith in his troubled brother finally bearing fruit. Tomorrow, Marcus would resume his eternal vigil, guarding the unknowns with unwavering dedication. But now his sacred duty carried additional meaning, proof that even in mankind's darkest moments, honor and redemption remained possible. Through duty, through sacrifice, through forgiveness, the light of human dignity could never be extinguished. Thank you for listening. Stories connect us in the most unexpected ways. If you felt that spark today, make sure you're subscribed. I share a new one daily, and the next might change your day.